Look, I'm not saying Jake Romano was the smartest guy in the cargo hauling business, but he usually managed to get through his day without causing an intergalactic incident. Usually, the Galactic Heritage Museum on Station Concordia was supposed to be a quick stop. 5 minutes, tops. Jake had a delivery scheduled in the commercial district, but his nav system glitched and dumped him right outside the museum entrance. No big deal. He'd cut through, maybe see some weird alien pottery, and be on his way. That was the plan. Anyway, the problem started in the Hall of Ancient Warrior Cultures, specifically in front of a glass case containing what the little holographic plaque described as the Blade of Eternal Dawn, sacred ceremonial weapon of the Krelthar High Priests, forged in the year of 7 moons, never to touch blood or battle. Jake wasn't really paying attention to the plaque. He was trying to open a protein bar, and those packages were designed by actual sadists. He'd been wrestling with the wrapper for a solid minute, using his teeth, his keys, even the edge of his datapad. Nothing worked. Then he spotted the letter opener. Okay, so it wasn't technically a letter opener. It was the Blade of Eternal Dawn, but come on. It was right there, behind glass that wasn't even locked properly, and it had a really good edge on it. Jake could tell quality craftsmanship when he saw it. The thing practically glowed with this weird blue light, and the handle had all these intricate carvings. Definitely overkill for a museum piece, but whatever. Rich aliens loved their fancy decorations. He carefully lifted the glass case, figuring he'd just borrow it for 2 seconds. The blade sliced through the protein bar wrapper like it was made of air. Beautiful. Absolutely perfect edge. Jake was genuinely impressed. He made a mental note to ask where the museum got their letter openers, because he needed one for his ship. That's when he heard the sound. Kind of a wet, choking gasp, like someone was trying to scream but forgot how vocal cords worked. Jake turned around and found himself face to face with Thrin, the museum's head curator. Well, face to chest, technically. Thrin was about 7 feet tall, covered in blue-green scales, and currently sporting 6 arms that were all trembling in what Jake assumed was either rage or some kind of seizure. "You," Thrin whispered, his voice shaking. "You touched the Blade of Eternal Dawn." "Oh, yeah, sorry, man. I'll put it right back. Just needed to open my snack." Thrin's eyes, all 4 of them, went completely wide. "You used the sacred Blade of Eternal Dawn, blessed by the high priests of Krelthar Prime, consecrated in the volcanic fires of Mount Treshkal, to open a protein bar? I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds bad." "Bad? Bad?" Thrin's voice was climbing octaves. "This blade was forged 3,000 years ago. It has never been used for any purpose other than the most sacred of ceremonies. Warriors have died protecting its honor. And you used it for processed meat paste. It's actually chicken-flavored. But yeah, I see your point." Jake carefully set the blade down on the display pedestal. "Look, no harm done, right? I'll just put it back and we can forget this ever happened." That's when the blade, apparently not a fan of being set down on random surfaces, rolled off the pedestal and shattered into approximately 700 pieces on the marble floor. The sound Thrin made wasn't in any language Jake recognized. It might not have been in any language that existed in known space. It was just pure, primal anguish given voice. "Okay," Jake said, backing away slowly. "So that's not ideal." Thrin collapsed. Just straight up fell to his knees, all 6 arms clutching at his head like he was trying to physically hold his brain together. Security drones were already swarming in, their sensors going absolutely haywire. "Sir, please step away from the artifact. Fragments." One drone chirped helpfully. "It's just a knife," Jake said, which in retrospect was probably not the right thing to say to someone having a religious experience in reverse. Thrin's head snapped up. "Just a knife. I mean, yeah? Look, it's a nice knife. Great craftsmanship. Really holds an edge. But at the end of the day, it's a tool, right? Tools are meant to be used." "Used," Thrin repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "This blade was held aloft during the coronation of 47 emperors. It cut the ceremonial cloth that began the Festival of Eternal Stars. It has been carried in procession across 17 worlds. And you think it is just a tool? Dude, my grandma has one exactly like it. She uses it to cut tomatoes." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that usually preceded explosions. Thrin's scales started changing color, cycling through what Jake assumed were various shades of disbelief, horror, and rage. "Your grandmother," Thrin said, slowly, "has a blade of Eternal Dawn, and she uses it to cut tomatoes. Yeah, She's had it for years. Works great. Never needs sharpening. One of the security drones made a sound like a computer crying. Within 10 minutes, Ambassador Quillix had arrived. Jake had never seen a Vorthelian before, and he could have gone his whole life without the experience. Quillix looked like someone had given a slug the ability to wear a business suit and develop a personality based entirely on tax code. He oozed into the hall of ancient warrior cultures, leaving a trail of bureaucratic slime, carrying a datapad that was absolutely covered in official-looking stamps. "Mr. Romano?" Quillix said, his voice like wet cardboard. "Do you understand the severity of what you've done?" Quillix. Broke a museum piece. "Look, I'll pay for it. How much could it cost? Couple thousand credits?" Thrin made that sound again. The dying language sound. "The blade of eternal dawn is priceless," Quillix explained with the patience of someone who really didn't have patience but was legally required to pretend. "These blades are forged once every 1,000 years during a conjunction of the 7 sacred moons of Krelthar Prime. The metal is folded 17,000 times by master smiths who train their entire lives for this singular purpose. Each blade is then blessed by the high priests in ceremonies that last for 6 months. They are never, under any circumstances, used for combat or any mundane purpose. They exist purely as symbols of spiritual perfection." "Okay, but again, my grandma has one and it's really not that big a deal." "Your grandmother does not have a blade of eternal dawn," Quillix said firmly. "That is impossible. There are only 43 known blades in existence, and every single one is accounted for. 37 are in museums, 5 are in active use in religious ceremonies on Krelthar Prime, and 1 is in the private collection of Emperor Xalthvor himself." Jake pulled out his datapad. "You want to bet? Because I can call her right now." "Please do," Thrin said, his voice hollow. "I would very much like to see this alleged blade that cuts tomatoes." Jake hit the call button. His grandmother answered on the second ring, her face filling the screen. Behind her, Jake could see her kitchen on Earth, the one with the yellow wallpaper she'd had since before he was born. "Jakey, how's my favorite grandson?" "Hey, Nana, quick question. You still have that weird glowing knife you use for cooking? The blue one? Of course. Hold on, I'm using it right now." The camera shifted, and there it was. Unmistakable. Identical to the one Jake had just shattered. The blade of eternal dawn, glowing with sacred blue light, currently being used to slice garlic. Thrin made a sound like his soul was leaving his body. "Isn't it wonderful?" Nana continued cheerfully. "I bought it at a garage sale maybe 30 years ago. Some nice military man was selling his old things. $5. Can you believe it? Best $5 I ever spent. This thing keeps an edge like you wouldn't believe." On screen, Nana used the sacred ceremonial blade to open an envelope, cut some twine off a package, and then, in a move that Jake was pretty sure violated several galactic treaties, used it to pry open a jar of pickles. Ambassador Quillix's eye stalks went limp. "Mrs. Romano," Quillix said, and Jake had never heard a slug sound like it was contemplating the heat death of the universe before. But here they were. "Could you please describe this knife in detail?" "Oh, it's gorgeous," Nana said, holding it up to the camera. "See these carvings on the handle? Little symbols all up and down. And it glows. I thought maybe it was some kind of fancy battery-operated thing, but nope, just glows all on its own. My book club ladies are so jealous." Thrin was now sitting on the floor, all 6 arms wrapped around himself, rocking gently. "The symbols," Quillix pressed on, his voice strained. "Can you show them more clearly?" Nana adjusted her camera angle. The symbols were unmistakable. Ancient Krelthar script, the kind that took scholars decades to learn. Jake could see Thrin mouthing the words as Nana inadvertently showed them off. Something about eternal flame and sacred duty, and definitely not garlic. "Mrs. Romano, where exactly did you purchase this item?" "Oh, like I said, garage sale. Up on Elmwood Street. This was back in, 2268 or 69? The Henderson's boy was selling off stuff from his military service. Sweet kid. Lost an arm fighting in some war out past the Centaurus sector. He had a whole box of these things." "A box," Thrin whispered. "A box of blades of eternal dawn. Well, I don't know about all that fancy name," Nana continued, completely oblivious to the cultural apocalypse she was describing. "But yeah, there were maybe 5 or 6 in the box. I almost bought 2, but Frank, God rest his soul, said, One good knife was enough. I wonder whatever happened to the others. Quillix was already typing frantically on his datapad. Initiating emergency galactic inquiry. Cross-referencing human military operations. Centaurus sector. Approximately 30 years ago. Searching for any gifting ceremonies involving Krelthar artifacts. Jake watched as his grandmother went back to cooking, using the 3,000-year-old sacred blade to chop onions. She was completely unbothered by the fact that 3 aliens on the other end of the video call looked like they were experiencing existential collapse in real time. Found it, Quillix announced, his voice flat. Human Coalition Third Fleet assisted Krelthar forces in repelling a Vraxian incursion at the Tresh-Nar border. In gratitude, the Krelthar High Command presented ceremonial blades to the human fleet commanders and distinguished soldiers. 7 blades total. That was our highest honor, Thrin said quietly. We gave them the blades of Eternal Dawn because they saved 17 million Krelthar lives. It was meant to show that we trusted them with our most sacred objects, that they were worthy of bearing our holiest symbols. Yeah, well, Jake said. I'm guessing nobody explained that part to the humans. The report indicates the human military filed them as ceremonial letter openers. Quillix read from his datapad. Distributed to personnel as service recognition gifts. No special storage requirements noted. Letter openers, Thrin repeated, his voice completely dead inside. Nana, what happened to the guy selling the knives? Jake asked. Oh, Tommy Henderson? He moved to New Seattle, I think. Opened a hardware store. Nice boy. Always sent me a Christmas card. Nana paused in her chopping. Wait, why? Is something wrong with my knife? It's not recalled or something, is it? Because I'm not giving this up. This is the best kitchen knife I've ever owned. Mrs. Romano, Quillix said carefully, that knife is a sacred religious artifact worth approximately 40 million credits. 40 million? Nana laughed. For a knife? Don't be ridiculous. I am not being ridiculous. That blade was blessed by high priests, forged in sacred ceremonies, and represents 3,000 years of Krelthar spiritual tradition. Well, it also dices a mean cucumber. Nana shrugged. Honestly, if your priests made it and never actually used it, that seems like a waste. What's the point of making something perfect if you're just going to stick it in a box? Jake watched Thrin's face cycle through about 15 different expressions. None of them good. Nana, maybe don't use it for a bit, okay? I think we need to sort some stuff out. Sort what out? I bought this fair and square. $5, cash, no returns. That's the garage sale code, Jakey. You know that. Quillix was back on his datapad, his eye stalks practically vibrating with stress. Emergency scan of human commercial databases. Cross-referencing. Sale records, estate sales, military surplus stores, online marketplaces. Searching for Krelthar ceremonial artifacts. His screen started pinging. A lot. Oh no, Quillix whispered. What? Jake asked, though he had a pretty good idea what was coming. I found them. I found all 7 blades. Quillix looked up, his expression the closest thing to horror Jake had seen on a slug. And approximately 33 additional blades from previous gifting ceremonies over the last century. 40 blades, Thrin said softly. 40 blades of Eternal Dawn, in human hands. Being used for mundane purposes. Not all mundane, Quillix corrected, scrolling through his results. One is being used as a gardening trowel in Portland. One is a fish scaler in Nova Scotia. And one, inexplicably, has been modified into a spatula for barbecue purposes in Texas. The sound Thrin made wasn't even biological anymore. It was just pure spiritual anguish given form. The Galactic Council emergency session was called within the hour, which Jake was pretty sure was a record. Apparently, the systematic desecration of an entire culture's sacred artifacts got bureaucrats moving faster than speed of light travel permit violations. Jake found himself sitting in a sterile white conference room with about 20 holographic representatives from various council species. Thrin was there in person, looking like he'd aged 1,000 years in the last 2 hours. Quillix was at the head of the table, surrounded by approximately 900 datapads, all beeping with incoming data. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Councillor Veshtar, a crystalline being who looked like someone had given a chandelier anxiety. Humanity has been using priceless Krelthar religious artifacts as kitchen utensils for 3 decades. That's a bit reductive, Jake offered. Some of them are being used for gardening. Veshtar's crystalline structure dimmed. That does not help your case, Mr. Romano. Quillix oozed forward, pulling up a holographic display. My investigation reveals the following timeline. 63 years ago, human forces assisted the Krelthar in the Battle of Treshnar. As is traditional, the Krelthar gifted 3 blades of eternal dawn to distinguished human soldiers. Our highest honor, Thrin added weakly. 47 years ago, humans aided in the evacuation of Krelthar colony worlds during the Vorash Plague. 2 more blades were gifted. 31 years ago, the Centaurus incident resulted in 7 blades being distributed. Similar patterns continue. In total, 43 blades have been given to humans over the past century as tokens of gratitude and respect. And not one human, Veshtar said slowly, thought to ask what these glowing, ornately carved, obviously ceremonial weapons were for. In our defense, Jake said, you guys give us a lot of weird stuff. Last year, the Zenthari gave us singing crystals that turned out to be their version of participation trophies. The Morphoids handed out what we thought were decorative plates that were actually their equivalent of restraining orders. Galactic gift-giving is confusing. The Blades of Eternal Dawn are clearly not participation trophies, Thrin said, his voice strained. I mean, you gave them to people for participating in battles, so… Quillix quickly moved on before Thrin could have another breakdown. The issue is compounded by human military logistics. The blades were filed as ceremonial items, Category 773A, which according to human military code means personal decorative items with no practical function. They had a practical function, Thrin protested. A spiritual function. Yes. Well, humans don't have a filing code for that. Quillix pulled up more data. The blades were distributed to soldiers as service recognition items. Most soldiers, upon retiring or rotating back to Earth, sold or gave away their accumulated possessions. The blades entered the general human economy through garage sales, estate sales, military surplus stores, and in one notable case, a charity auction for a local animal shelter. A sacred blade of the Krelthar was sold to benefit Earthcats, Veshtar said flatly. Dogs, actually. Golden Retriever Rescue. They got $200 for it. Thrin put his head down on the table. Quillix brought up images on the main display. Jake had to admit, it was pretty damning. There was Nana's blade, of course, happily cutting vegetables. But there were also photos pulled from human social media. A guy in Alberta, using his blade to open paint cans. A woman in Tokyo who'd mounted hers on the wall as modern art. Some college kid in Mumbai using one as a particularly overqualified pizza cutter. The barbecue spatula from Texas was particularly impressive. The owner had welded the blade onto a long handle and was using it to flip steaks, the sacred blue glow reflecting off the grill flames. He'd posted about it extensively, calling it the best damn spatula in the whole damn state. This one particularly disturbs me, Quillix said, pulling up another image. This blade is being used to trim bonsai trees in Kyoto. The owner claims the sacred edge is perfect for precise cuts and has won 17 gardening competitions using it. At least it's being used skillfully, Jake offered. That is not the point. Thrin's head shot up. These blades were forged by masters who dedicated their lives to creating spiritual perfection. They were blessed in ceremonies that took months. They were meant to symbolize the highest ideals of Krelthar culture, and humans are using them to flip burgers. Really good burgers, though. The guy in Texas has a 5-star rating on Yelp. Counselor Veshtar chimed in before Thrin could explode. The question before us is what to do about this situation. The Krelthar have every right to demand the return of their sacred artifacts. Agreed, Quillix said. However, there are complications. According to Galactic Commerce Law, Section 4012, items purchased in good faith by third parties cannot be confiscated without compensation at current market value. 40 million credits per blade, Veshtar calculated. Times 43 blades, that's 1,720 billion credits. The Krelthar treasury doesn't have that, Thrin admitted. We spent most of our budget on the volcano ceremonies to forge the replacement blades, which take 1,000 years, which means we can't actually replace these for another 973 years. Jake raised his hand. Quick question. If these blades are so sacred and important, why did you keep giving them to random humans? The silence was deafening. Because, Thrin said finally, you kept saving our lives, and we had nothing else valuable enough to give you. The blades of eternal dawn were the only gifts worthy of the debt we owed. That's actually kinda nice, Jake said. It would be nice if you hadn't sold them at garage sales. The Galactic Council meeting devolved pretty quickly after that. Thryn demanded immediate return of all 43 blades, no exceptions, no negotiations. Quillix kept trying to explain property laws and legal complications. Counselor Veshtar suggested therapy for everyone involved, and then someone made the mistake of posting about it on the Galactic Net. Within an hour, it was the top trending topic across 17 systems. Humans, being humans, responded exactly the way Jake should have expected. They started posting photos. "Oh no," Quillix said, staring at his datapad as notifications flooded in. "Oh no, no, no." The holographic display filled with images. Hundreds of them. Humans proudly showing off their blades of eternal dawn in action. One guy had used his to cut his wedding cake. A grandmother in Ohio had been using hers to prune roses for 20 years. Someone in Australia had taken theirs camping and was using it as the universe's most overqualified survival knife. This one carved the Thanksgiving turkey for my family for 15 years, and it's still perfect. Read one post, showing a blade that was definitely glowing with sacred blue light while surrounded by mashed potatoes. "Best garden tool I ever owned. My tomatoes have never been happier," said another, with a photo of prize-winning vegetables. The comments section was even worse. "If these aliens made perfect tools and then never used them, that's their problem, not ours. My dad carried his in Vietnam too. That blade has sentimental value. They can pry it from my cold, dead hands. I paid $7 for mine at a yard sale. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers." Thryn was watching the display with the expression of someone watching their entire culture crumble in real time. They don't understand. These aren't tools. They're symbols. They represent everything the Krelthar holds sacred. "Yeah, but here's the thing," Jake said. "Humans don't really do the whole sacred unused tool thing. If something works well, we use it. That's how we show respect. By actually using it." "That is not respect. That's desecration." "Is it, though?" Jake pulled up one of the photos. An elderly man in Korea, holding a blade of eternal dawn. The caption read, "This knife belonged to my father who served in the coalition fleet. He gave it to me before he died. I use it every day to prepare meals for my family. Every time I cook, I remember him and the Krelthar lives he helped save. Best gift he ever gave me." Thryn stared at the image for a long moment. That's not what we intended." "Maybe not, but intention doesn't always match result, you know?" More posts kept flooding in. A woman in Brazil who'd been using her blade for carpentry, creating intricate woodwork that had won national awards. A chef in France who claimed his blade of eternal dawn made him a 3-star Michelin restaurant chef because the precision was unmatched. A doctor in Japan who'd carefully modified hers into a surgical scalpel and credited it with helping her save hundreds of lives. "My blade helps me create art," one post read. "If your priests made something this perfect and never used it, they wasted its potential." "This is a disaster," Thryn said, but his voice had lost some of its conviction. "Or," Quillix said slowly, "this is a cultural learning opportunity." "Don't," Thryn warned. "The humans have a point," Veshtar chimed in. "The Krelthar created perfect tools and then refused to use them. The humans created nothing but gave the tools purpose. In a way, you're both right and both wrong." "I am not wrong," Thryn insisted. "These blades were made for ceremony, not for cutting vegetables." Jake's datapad buzzed. It was Nana, video calling again. When he answered, she had her entire book club gathered around her kitchen table. 7 elderly women, all human, all holding blades of eternal dawn. "Jakey, we've been talking," Nana said. "The girls and I decided we're not giving up our knives. We bought them fair and square. And frankly, if these Krell whatever people are upset that we're actually using their fancy knives instead of letting them collect dust, that's their problem." "Missus, Romano," Thryn started, but Nana cut him off. "Young man, I've been using this knife for 30 years. It's cut birthday cakes for all 6 of my grandchildren. It's prepared meals for my late husband during his illness. It's helped me cook for church fundraisers and neighborhood block parties. This knife has fed hundreds of people, maybe thousands. And you want to tell me that's wrong? That I should have just stuck it in a drawer?" "It's not about utility." Thryn's scales were flushing darker. "It's about meaning. These blades represent spiritual ideals that have guided my people for millennia. And what ideal says a good tool should never be used?" Nana shot back. "What kind of spirituality wastes perfection?" The book club ladies nodded in agreement, their sacred blades glinting in the kitchen light. This is impossible, Thrin said, slumping in his chair. We cannot find common ground here. Our cultures are too different. Maybe, Jake said, or maybe we just honor tools differently. You honor them by preserving them. We honor them by using them. Neither way is wrong, they're just different. Different, Thrin repeated. Different in a way that means 43 sacred blades are currently cutting earth produce. Could be worse, Jake offered. Could be 44. Thrin glared at him with all four eyes. The compromise, when it finally came, was about as elegant as you'd expect from a negotiation between a culture that worshipped unused perfection and a species that thought the best compliment you could give a tool was wearing it out completely. Ambassador Quillix spent 3 days drafting the agreement. Jake was pretty sure the slug hadn't slept, which raised questions about Vorthelian biology he didn't really want answered. The Galactic Council has reached a decision, Quillix announced, looking exhausted in a way Jake didn't know slugs could look. After extensive deliberation, cultural consultation, and approximately 900,000 angry messages from both sides, we have brokered the following terms. Thrin sat up straighter, all 6 arms crossed. On the video screen, Nana and her book club leaned in closer. First, Quillix continued, the Krelthar must accept that the human owners of the Blades of Eternal Dawn acquired them legally and in good faith. The blades will not be confiscated or forcibly returned. Absolutely not, Thrin started, but Quillix held up a tentacle. Second, the Krelthar High Council will issue a formal statement acknowledging that humans honor tools through active use rather than preservation, and that this represents a valid, if different, cultural approach to sacred objects. Thrin's scales went through about 12 color changes. Third, all human owners of Blades of Eternal Dawn must attend a cultural sensitivity seminar, approximately 3 hours in length, explaining the spiritual significance of the blades to Krelthar culture. 3 hours? Nona protested. I have bocce on Thursdays. 3 hours, Mrs. Romano. Non-negotiable. The seminar will be available via holographic streaming at your convenience. Fine, Nana huffed. But I'm bringing snacks. Fourth, Quillix said, and Jake could swear the slug was smiling. The Krelthar will establish a new tradition. For every blade of Eternal Dawn that remains in human hands and in active use, the Krelthar will forge a new ceremonial blade. These new blades will be called the Blades of Shared Purpose, and they will honor both preservation and utility. Thrin was very quiet for a long moment. Thanks for watching. Thanks very. Thanks very. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. That would require changing 1,000-year-old traditions. Yes, Counselor Veshtar said. But your traditions already changed the moment you gave the first blade to a human. You just didn't realize it yet. And finally, Quillix said, Mr. Jake Romano will compensate the Galactic Heritage Museum for the destroyed Blade of Eternal Dawn. However, in recognition of the cultural misunderstanding, the price has been reduced from 40 million credits to a more reasonable sum of 50,000 credits. 50,000? Jake yelped. That's still bankrupting. Only slightly bankrupting, Quillix corrected. We did say slightly. You can arrange a payment plan. 50 years should cover it. I'll be 75 years old. Then I suggest you take better care of museum property in the future. Thrin looked at the holographic contract floating in front of him. His scales had settled into a color Jake didn't recognize. Something between resignation and maybe, possibly, the tiniest bit of acceptance. My people will not like this, Thrin said finally. Probably not, Quillix agreed, but they'll like it more than spending 1 trillion credits buying back kitchen knives. And for the record, Nana said from the screen, I'll attend your seminar, and I'll keep using my knife, but I'll think about your people when I do. About the soldiers who earned these blades and the lives they saved. That counts for something, doesn't it? Thrin looked at her for a long moment. Mrs. Romano, would you do me the honor of sending me a photo? When you use the blade for something important to you. A holiday meal, perhaps. I would like to see how it serves you. Nana blinked, surprised. You sure about that, honey? I thought it upset you. It does, Thrin admitted. But perhaps I need to learn to be upset in a more productive way. If our blades are to have a new purpose, I should understand what that purpose looks like. Well, all right then. Thanksgiving is coming up. I'll send you a picture when I carve the turkey. I will frame it, Thrin said, and Jake genuinely couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic or serious. And hang it in the Museum of Ancient Warrior Cultures, next to the display case of the blade you used. with a plaque explaining how cultural exchange sometimes requires us to accept that our sacred gifts may serve purposes we never intended, but are no less meaningful for it. That's very diplomatic of you, Quillick said approvingly. I still require therapy. We'll add that to Mr. Romano's bill. Hey, 3 months later, Jake attended the Cultural Sensitivity Seminar. It was indeed 3 hours long, incredibly boring, and taught him more about Krelthar religious practices than he ever wanted to know. But he sat through it, took notes, and only fell asleep twice. Nana sent her Thanksgiving photo to Thrin. The blade of eternal dawn, glowing blue in her kitchen, carving a perfect turkey, surrounded by her entire family. 3 generations gathered around one table, and at the center, a 3,000-year-old sacred artifact, doing exactly what good tools were meant to do. Thrin did frame it. Jake saw it the next time he passed through the museum, being extra careful not to touch anything. The plaque read, "The Blade of Shared Purpose." A reminder that the highest honor we can give our creations is allowing them to serve life in whatever form that service takes. Right below it was another plaque. Please do not attempt to open snack foods with museum property. We mean it this time. Jake figured that was fair.